What is going on, guys? Welcome to the kind of intro episode here to the Be Greyt Podcast, where we're going to talk some college football all season long. I think it's best if I just kind of start off here and introduce myself, who I am, give you all a little insight. My name's Grayson. I went to the wonderful University of Georgia. So I guess you can understand and kind of come into this knowing where my allegiances lie. But I'm going to try and keep everything that I say as unbiased as I possibly can. Um, but, if you want to leave a comment trashing me and my opinions and call me biased, that's perfectly fine. No hard feelings. I came out the womb a Georgia fan. I've been a Georgia fan all my life. Love the dogs. But more than that, I love college football. And I think it's a beautiful sport. And I thought to myself, why not just get on a microphone and just start talking about it? You don't have to agree with my opinions, obviously, although I think I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable, but obviously there's more people more knowledgeable than me. Um, and I just feel like I'm just going to come on here. I have a few notes, not much. I don't have a script of what I'm going to say. I'm just going to come on here and I'm just going to start talking. I have points that I want to talk about and topics. Today, we're going to get into the Michigan scandal that's been going around right now. Well, it's been going around for forever. It's just a lot's come out this weekend and at the start of this week. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the hot seat, some coaches that are on the hot seat. And I'm just going to kind of, at the end, I'm just going to give you guys kind of what my schedule is going to look like as far as when episodes are going to come out. I'm very new to this type of stuff, but I'm just going to give it my all. And I'm really just doing this because I'm passionate about college football and I thought it'd be a fun thing to just do. So, why don't we get started? First and foremost, I think this college football season coming up is going to be special, absolutely special, for a number of reasons. Obviously, you have the playoff expansion to 12 teams. Obviously, you have the conference expansions that have been going on that's been ravaging college football as we know it. The We have the Pac-2 with Oregon State and Washington State. We have the new ACC with the additions of Cal and Stanford and SMU. We have the Big 12 editions, and we have the SEC editions, and we have the Big 10 editions. I think this year is going to be so interesting. Going to be so interesting because also Nick Saban has retired, so this will be the first football season in forever, it feels, without the GOAT. And as a Georgia fan, I can tell you I was very happy when that news dropped, but I also can recognize his greatness and that it will feel weird not seeing Nick Saban on Alabama sidelines. So, there's going to be a new person at the helm for Alabama, Kalen DeBoer. We'll see how he does. I think the Heisman is more up in the air than it's been in a while. I think a lot of us kind of figured last year is going to be kind of a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels show. Year before that, no one was too surprised when Caleb Williams won. So I think the Heisman's really up in the air. You've heard a lot of talk about Dylan Gabriel. You've heard a lot of talk about Carson Beck. There's some Shadur Sanders because, of course, there is. There's some talk about him. Some talk about Quinn Ewers. And I don't know where I stand as far as who I think is going to win the Heisman. I feel like the Heisman, while it's important and while I understand why a player could obviously care about winning the Heisman because it's a big achievement, me personally, I have never really cared much for the Heisman because I don't know. What does the Heisman really mean if you don't win the national championship, in my opinion? But then again, I'm not a player, so I can't really, you know, compare the two, I guess. I think a lot of teams are in position this year to kind of take over the sport with Nick Saban gone? Is Alabama going to keep their dynasty going? It's possible. It's obviously possible. Or is a new team, is Georgia going to take that role, take that helm, and just run with it? Are they going to have an Alabama like run? We'll see. Is Ohio State finally going to get over the hump? We'll see. Speaking of Ohio State, though, it brings me to the Michigan scandal. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. Speaking of Ohio State, it got me to the Michigan scandal, but I said it, so it's out there. A lot has, I wouldn't really say come to light, because we knew a lot of the stuff already that has kind of, the NCAA has kind of announced. I mean, they said that they have confirmed that it was Connor Stallions on the Central Michigan sidelines. Spoiler alert, NCAA, we all knew that because we have eyes. And you had them say Sharon Moore deleted, what was it, 58, something like that, texts with Connor Stallions, which is not surprising. And of course you have good old Jim Harbaugh and his comments. What were they, yesterday? I think, saying that he had nothing to do with any of it, and of course he says this. Whenever anything goes good at Michigan, it's all because of him. But if something bad happens, it's everybody but him. What a shocker! I think that this is a really tricky and sticky subject, because a lot of people have different opinions as far as A, whether this is that big of a deal, and B, what their punishment should be. Me personally, if you want to know where I stand, I think they're a bunch of dirty cheaters. And I think that it's kind of crazy, when I look back at last year and at the playoff situation that happened with Florida State. It's weird to me that Florida State gets punished because they had a quarterback who was injured, but Michigan, who had all these allegations against them of cheating with all this evidence, that they didn't get punished at all. It's just interesting to me. Now, I understand the playoff committee probably wanted to steer clear of any allegations, but something just doesn't sit right with me with this whole Michigan thing. I've heard people say they should take their national championship away. I've heard people say, oh, they should just, ban Sharon Moore for 3 games or something like that. It's really hard to say. I feel like their national championship should be taken away. Now, did they beat Washington fair and square? I believe so. Did Michigan have a good team last year? They absolutely did. No one should take away how good of a team Michigan had last year. But what we can take away is, how did that team win all those games fairly? I think you could say in the second half of the season, they probably did, because by that point, all the allegations were out and every team that played them knew about these allegations. And you would think they changed their signals. But I feel as if you cannot credit how good this team was with the way that they went about gaining their success. I don't want to take anything away from the players, because I feel like they have good players. Although JJ McCarthy's a fraud. But that's besides the point. Let me not get into JJ McCarthy rant, or as I call him, JJ Midcarthy. I feel like there has to be some sort of major punishment for them, but I almost also feel like it's too late. Like, if you take away their national championship, do Michigan fans really care? I mean, they were there, they watched the game, they saw them hold up the trophy, and in their eyes, they will always say they are national champions. And you cannot take that away from those fans, because they're always going to say they are, even though the rest of us around the country are going to continue to tell them that they're frauds and didn't deserve it. So in that aspect, what's the point of taking it away? We're all gonna not. We're all of us that are not Michigan fans are going to say anyways that they didn't earn that title fairly, and Michigan fans are going to say they did, and that's how it's going to be till the end of time. And if you give Sharon Moore, I think something's coming for Sharon Moore for sure because of those deleted text messages. It's just, we'll see what it is. I mean, they could do something similar like what they did with Jim Harbaugh, where they suspend him for so many games, but he can still practice, which in that case doesn't really matter. But I mean, if Sharon Moore is not coaching at that Texas game, that could be very important with how that game ends and the result of that game and how people look at that game, really. And I don't feel bad for Sharon Moore because he's clearly complicit in this. But I think Jim Harbaugh, to be as blunt as I can, actually, I won't be as blunt as I can, but to be somewhat blunt, I think Jim Harbaugh is just a garbage human being. I mean, he's leaving Sharon Moore to take all the heat. Sharon Moore, I feel like, is going to end up being the scapegoat in all this. And in a way, I feel bad for the guy, but in a way, I don't. I mean, you got yourself involved in this situation. There's a reason you deleted all those text messages. You can't hide from that. You can't run from it. So something's definitely going to come to Michigan. We'll see how serious and aggressive it is from the NCAA because we know how the NCAA is. But I think it's just a waiting game to see what they do. And honestly, I don't know if I really care at this point. Because it's already, almost a year. I mean, it's already months too late. So the next thing I'm going to get into is the hot seat. Got a lot of coaches who, I wouldn't say there's a lot of coaches who are on the hot seat, but I do think there's a lot of coaches that their seats, it's a little toasty. It's a little warm, but not fully hot yet. The coaches that are on the hot seat, I think for the most part are pretty obvious. I might forget somebody just to let y'all know. But the first one that comes to mind is Billy Napier. I mean, and the poor guy, I mean, the schedule's brutal. I mean, the schedule is absolutely brutal. How in the world is Billy supposed to get this team to a bowl game? Does anyone have the answer to that question? How? How's it going to happen? Because you look at the schedule, and I have it here in front of me. How many of these games would you say Florida's actually going to be favored in? I would probably say let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4. There's some that are kind of toss-ups. I don't think they're going to be favored against Miami. They'll be favored against Samford, obviously. The Texas A&M one's interesting, and I think that's going to end up being a very interesting game. And I think that game might end up being a must-win if they want to even sniff a bowl game. But because they're at home, they might end up being favored, but I'm not sure. I think Texas A&M is better than them. They'll be favored against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's awful. They'll be favored against UCF, but that UCF game, even that game, not easy. That is not a cakewalk game. If Florida plays around in that game, they will lose to the Gus Bus. It will happen if they play around. Tennessee, it's at Tennessee. They won't be favored. The Kentucky one, also interesting. They might be favored because they're at home. Georgia obviously won't. And these last 5 are, it's brutal. And they're not going to be favored at all. I mean, they'll probably be major underdogs in all 5. They'll be a major underdog to Georgia, major underdog to Texas, major underdog to LSU, probably a major underdog to Ole Miss. And we'll see how Florida State is, but I would imagine they'll be a pretty significant underdog to them too. I just don't see a bowl game here because in my opinion, these last 5 games are almost guaranteed losses. So then that means that your 6 wins to make it to a bowl game have to come in your first 7 games. So you have to go 6-1, in my opinion. Going in, you have to be 6-1 going into the Georgia game. And I mean, is that possible? So Samford's a win, Mississippi State's a win. Those are the only 2 guaranteed wins, is Samford and Mississippi State. 2. You're looking for 4 more. I don't think you're going to get it against Tennessee. So I think Tennessee's the most guaranteed loss in that clump of 7 games, because you're at Tennessee, and I think Tennessee's just overall a better team than you. Now, look, the Florida-Tennessee game has been weird the past few years. And Florida has won that game even when they shouldn't, just like last year. But you're at Tennessee, so I don't think it bodes well for you, and I think you lose. But you can't get another loss. I'll give you a win against Kentucky, because I think Kentucky is going to be a fine team. But because you're at home, I think Florida plays very well at home, has a really good home field advantage. I don't think Kentucky will beat you. UCF, you'll beat if you take them seriously, like you should. So at that point, you have 4 wins and a loss. So it really comes down to you have to beat Texas A&M and Miami. And that's a hard task. Now, you have them both at home. But I think Miami, and we'll get to Miami in just a second with Mr. Cristobal, but Miami needs that win just as much as you do. Because, like I just said, if you don't get that win, I really don't see how you make a bowl game. And if you win, Mario Cristobal his time at Miami could be running very short if he loses that game, because he shouldn't be losing. He shouldn't. Miami has a better team than Florida. You have Cam Ward. They have the better quarterback in Cam Ward. They brought in Damian Martinez. They shouldn't lose that game. And the Texas A&M one, I think you have a better chance of winning because of the new coach. But again, Texas A&M has a better quarterback in Connor Wegman. So it's a rough one for Florida. I really wish these hard games for them was more spread out. These last 5. These last 5. And it doesn't help that with these last 5, 2 of them are on the road and one of them's a neutral site. That doesn't help. And the 2 games you have at home, LSU and Ole Miss, I think are just too much better than you for you to win. And I said last year, obviously not on a mic because I wasn't doing this last year, but to people close to me, I told people last year Florida was not going to make a bowl game. And people like to call me the Florida hater in my family. They like to call me the Florida hater. I call myself a Florida realist, okay? And I was right last year, and I'm going to be right this year. They're not making a bowl game. It's not going to happen, okay? And I don't hate this Florida team. I think Billy was the wrong hire. And I will say Graham Mertz has been shocking, because that was something I was very wrong on. I thought Graham Mertz was going to come to Florida and be just as trash, even more trash, actually. But he has kind of revitalized himself and been decent and been solid. But I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. I don't think most people see it. I don't even know if Florida fans see it. But I think this could be the last year for Billy Napier. Or, who knows? Maybe they bring him back. Maybe they understand how hard the schedule is, and they bring him back. You know what? And if they want to do that, they can go ahead and do that. We'll see what happens. And I think a big reason why Billy could keep his job is because of DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway clearly likes Billy Napier. That's why he came to Florida. So if they fire Billy Lagway, if they fire Billy Napier, does DJ Lagway walk out the door? Does he enter the transfer portal? If so, do you really want to fire him? That'll be interesting to kind of navigate. Another quarterback, goodness gracious, another head coach that I think is on the hot seat is one I've mentioned, Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal has been an utter disappointment and failure at Miami, and they have disappointed every single year that he's been there. And it isn't from really a lack of talent, I would say. I think they've had good talent. It's just the results have been just bad. I mean, they were 7-6 last year, lost the bowl game to Rutgers in the Pinstripe Bowl. Look at that. Go Rutgers. And you look at their schedule this year, and I think it's manageable for sure. Again, the game against Florida is very important for both teams. Miami and Mario Cristobal need the win. They need it. They have to have it. But so does Billy. But then you get two cupcakes. You get Florida A&M and Ball State. Those should be wins. You go to South Florida. I mean, hey, Alabama had trouble at South Florida last year. So I would say you should probably take that seriously, but we can give you a win. Virginia Tech's going to be a good team. A good team. Do not take Virginia Tech lightly, or they will beat you. And then you have Cal, and you're a better team pretty significantly compared to Cal. But you have to travel all the way to Cal to play them. And them ACC boys are not used to it. So we'll have to see how they do. Then you're at Louisville. That's a hard game. Then you have Florida State. That's a hard game. You have Duke. You should beat Duke. Duke will be not as good as they were last year with them losing Mike Elko. At Georgia Tech. We remember how the Georgia Tech game went last year where Mario Cristobal, I don't even know how to describe what that even was. Ineptitude, maybe? I think ineptitude is the right word to use for what that was. Not kneeling the ball down, running the ball, fumbling, and then letting Georgia Tech score a touchdown to beat you. And now you're at Georgia Tech, so we'll see if you can come out with the fire and beat them. Then you have Wake Forest. Wake Forest is not good. And then at Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is a team I'm very intrigued by with the new head coach they have, Fran Brown. And I think they did very well in the portal with bringing in Kyle McCord and some others. And I really like that Syracuse team. And you get them at the end of the year at Syracuse. I think that could be a dangerous game and a very sneaky game. So I think Miami has a chance to make it to the ACC championship game. And I'll do previews for every conference as far as who I think will go, who I think will win the conference, who will be in the conference championship game, surprising team, disappointing team, dark horse, yada, yada, yada. So I won't say where I think Miami could go to because I don't want to spoil. But they have the potential, obviously, to make it to the ACC championship game. We all know this. They have the potential. But it's about actually achieving. And there's a lot of teams like Miami that are like that, where they have the potential. You just actually have to achieve it. Penn State is a team you think about that's like that. Penn State is a team that has the potential, but when was the last time they achieved? They beat Ohio State. They beat Michigan. They're in the Big Ten championship. They're doing something. I mean, Penn State is the king of the bronze medal, of third place. And Miami hasn't even gotten to that level. I think Miami would love to be bronze right now, but they're not. but they have the potential to get there. It's just about doing it. Another name, and I'm going to bring up names that I don't necessarily think will be fired if they have a poor performance or a performance that is not what their fans or administration expected, but seats that are also warm, because those two are really like two that I think are 100% on the hot seat. But another name I want to bring up is Ryan Day. And not because I think Ryan Day should be fired. I think that Ryan Day is obviously a great head coach. And if he were to be fired, because let's say they lose to Michigan again, when Michigan is down, or we're expecting Michigan to be down, and you're at home, if they lose to Michigan again, I mean, that is a rough look for Ryan Day. But like, let's say Ohio State loses to Oregon because they have to go to Oregon, and they lose to Michigan. Let's say those two things happen. And let's say they don't even make the Big Ten championship. But I think we can all assume they'll probably still make the playoff. They're a later seed. And they go and are eliminated in the first or second round of the playoff. Most teams would love that outcome. But this is an Ohio State team that's bringing back a lot of talent, especially on defense. Their defense is projected to be insanely good this year. They brought in Will Howard, who is kind of the definition of average, but he doesn't need to be some all-star QB. He just needs to manage the game because he has two beast running backs behind him. He has a solid wide receiver room. And Ohio State is expected to be the first or second best team in the country, depending on who you ask. So if you have another season where Ryan Day and Ohio State disappoint, does he get fired? I don't think so, and I wouldn't fire him. I don't, because you have to it's not just about firing the head coach. You also have to hire a new one. And who would you hire? Who would you go out and hire that would have better results, realistically? Who are you going to find? Urban Meyer is not going to come out of retirement for you. It's not going to happen. So I think you just stick with Ryan Day and hope he figures it out. But to say his seat isn't warm, I think would be lying. I think that'd be lying. Because I think it is. And I can't, in a way, blame fans or the administration for getting frustrated with him, because, I mean, you should not be losing to Michigan 3 years in a row. Because is it 3 years in a row? I'm pretty sure it's 3 years in a row now. Because all 3 of those years, you did not have a worse team. Last year, maybe. Last year, I'd probably say you had a worse team compared to Michigan. But the other 2 years, I mean, you had C.J. Stroud, and you lost to Michigan. I mean, to me, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. And so I think Ryan Day, he needs to have a really good year. He needs to make the national championship. He needs to. You know what? He has to. And he has a favorable schedule. Shocking. Ohio State has a favorable schedule. I feel like I've talked to this to people close to me for years now. Ohio State always has favorable schedules. I mean, out the gate, Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. I mean, that's just lighting the world on fire. I'll tell you what. I mean, oh man. Are they giving themselves a hard time? At Michigan State, I think Michigan State will soon be a good team, but they're not there yet with, Jonathan Smith in his first year. The Iowa game could be interesting. We'll have to see how Iowa is on offense this year, but it's at Ohio State. Oregon game is really when I think you get your first major challenge. And right now, I think I'd pick Oregon to win because it's in Oregon. And I think this Oregon team is good. Nebraska could be interesting, but I think Dylan Raiola on the road at Ohio State, I just think it's too much. I mean, at Penn State, once again, I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to pick Penn State to beat Michigan or Ohio State until I see it happen again. Purdue's terrible. You're going to beat them. Northwestern's terrible. You're going to beat them. Indiana, I think, is a little sneaky, but not sneaky enough to beat you. I think you'll beat them pretty good as well. So, and then the Michigan game, the game, we'll have to just see what happens. I mean, I would pick Ohio State to win. I think you should beat them pretty badly, actually, even though Michigan will have a solid defense. But it'll be interesting. Another coach I'll talk about, Shane Beamer of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane is an interesting guy, isn't he? I mean, he always seems to have way more confidence in his team than logic would. I don't even know where I was going with that saying. He has way too much confidence in his team. That's what I'll say. And I guess you could say, he's the head coach. Of course, he's supposed to have confidence. I mean, but this is blind confidence. I mean, this is just illogical. I think it was at SEC Media Days. He said something he said something like he felt like the floor for this team was the playoff. I mean, come on, Shane, buddy. You're setting unrealistic expectations, and when you don't even come close to hitting them, it's not going to look good. I mean, does South Carolina even make a bowl game realistically? I don't think so. They'll beat Old Dominion. Congratulations. So will everyone else. Then you're going to lose at Kentucky. Then you're going to lose to LSU. But then don't worry. You get Akron. Don't worry. You'll beat them. But then you'll lose to Ole Miss. You'll lose to Alabama. You'll lose to Oklahoma. You'll lose to Texas A&M. But then don't worry. You'll beat Vanderbilt. Whoop-de-doo. Then you'll lose to Missouri. Don't worry. You'll beat Wofford. Whoop-de-doo. And then you'll lose to Clemson. I mean, this team's not good. This team hasn't been good. It's not going to be good. It will only be good if they can find a new head coach. I don't think Shane is the guy. I don't think Beamer Ball is the guy. I don't think it's even close. So I don't see a good year happening for South Carolina. I think it's going to be a very mediocre year, downright terrible year. And I think they're going to be looking for a new head coach, as they should. The last person I'm going to talk about, it's a lot of SEC coaches now that I'm thinking about it. Sam Pittman, which I think this one's obvious as well. I don't know how he wasn't fired last year, because last year was downright terrible. And it's going to be that way again. I mean, I had their schedule pulled up. Look at some of their losses last year. And it's so funny. It's so interesting, too. I mean, they got blown out by Missouri and Auburn, but yet somehow only lost to Alabama by 3. And they beat Florida somehow. They lost to Mississippi State in a barn burner 7-3. Lost to BYU. Only lost to LSU by 3 somehow. So, I mean, they have good performances occasionally, but a lot of it is just hot garbage. And look at their schedule. Arkansas, Pine Bluff. That's a win. You're going to lose to Oklahoma State because you're going to be at Oklahoma State, and I fear Ollie Gordon is going to introduce himself to you, and you're not going to like it. You'll beat UAB. They're terrible. Don't think Trent Dilfer's the guy for that job. Auburn's going to be better, and you're at Auburn, loss. You're at Texas A&M, guess what? Loss. Tennessee, loss. LSU, loss. At Mississippi State, I can't even say you'll win that. Mississippi State's not even good. They have a first-year head coach. I'm not even confident you'll beat Mississippi State. You couldn't beat Mississippi State last year, and they were downright terrible. And you're at Mississippi State, so guess what? Loss. Ole Miss, say it with me, loss. Texas, say it with me, loss. But then don't worry. No need to fret. LA Tech is coming to town. So maybe you'll beat them. And then Missouri. Guess what? Loss. So what's that? 3 wins? And Sam Pittman, you're out. You saved yourself somehow for one more year. I don't know what blackmail he has on somebody, but you're gone, buddy. You're gone. And I don't know who they'll go and hire. I don't know. Just like I don't know who South Carolina will hire, but the guys they have there now are not fit for the job. And you know what? I'm going to bring up one more coach. And that's Deion Sanders. Do we think Deion... It's so crazy that I want to say his seat is warm, even though I'm pretty confident it's not. Even though it should be. Last year was such a weird year. And a big reason why it was a weird year, I actually don't think has anything to do with Deion Sanders in Colorado. I think it has a big thing to do with the media. Because the goalpost moving was insane. This team was 3-0. And the way the media was talking, you would have thought that Colorado was about to go to the Natty and just beat everyone by 60. And then, by halftime of the Oregon game, the goalpost movie, I mean, it was the funniest thing ever. By halftime of the Oregon game, those same people were like, I mean, this was expected. Oregon's a good team. Deion Sanders is still doing an amazing job. I mean, Colorado won 0 games last year. But then he lost another. And he lost another. And he lost another. And they lost the rest of their games. But what did the media still say? They won 0 game. Or sorry, he won 1 other game. My apologies. They won 1 other game. Who was it? Who was the other team they beat? Am I tripping? Because they beat TCU. They beat Nebraska. They beat Colorado State. Oh, Arizona State. I was blind. Arizona State was at 14. And they were terrible. And again, I mean, just the goalpost moving was insane. And those same people were just, oh my gosh, but don't you guys remember? Colorado won 0 games. They won 0 games last year. So technically speaking, Deion winning 4 games, I mean, that's quadruple times what the last person did. So in theory, he's actually doing a great job. And that would be okay if Deion and Shadur did not talk like Colorado was like this behemoth of a team. I mean, Shadur at Big 12 media days. What was the quote? We're everyone's Super Bowl. We're everyone's Super Bowl, bro. Shadur, buddy. Paul Feinbaum said it best. You're not everyone's Super Bowl. You're an easy win. and look at the schedule. I think they go 4-8 again. And then what do all the supporters say? What do they say then, huh? And that's assuming those 4 wins, by the way, that's assuming they beat North Dakota State, who's not a bad team. North Dakota State is a sneaky, really good team. Colorado takes them lightly. They will lose. And that's assuming they beat Colorado State, a team who, when they were at home last year, a team who they had to go to overtime to beat. And then they talk trash, even though they were what was that? They were favored by a large amount and had to go to overtime to beat them. And this time they're on the road to Colorado State. So that's 4-8, assuming they win those 2 games. And then you look at the rest of their schedule. I think they could beat Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati's terrible. I think they could beat Baylor at home because Baylor's terrible. They're not beating Nebraska at Nebraska. Defense is too good. I don't know if they beat UCF because, again, it's at UCF. The Gus Bus, man. They're not beating Arizona. They're not beating Kansas State. They're not beating Utah. They're not beating Kansas. They're not beating Oklahoma State, I don't think. And I don't think they'll beat Texas Tech. I don't see a path to a bowl game for Deion in Colorado. I don't know how anyone really does. And I don't think they're going to fire him because of how much money he brings in to the administration and the college and the university, the program. But I think the question has to be asked, when is enough enough? And you hear all the off the field stuff going on with Colorado and Shadur and all this nonsense that has nothing to do with football. And even the stuff that does have to do with football is bad. So when is enough enough? You have to ask that question. This has been a very fun time for me. I don't expect, just to let everyone know, I don't expect to gain some sort of mega popularity by doing this podcast, doing these episodes and everything. I'm kind of just doing it to have fun, as a fun thing to do, because I love college football and I love talking about college football. And if anyone laughs at my takes, calls me an idiot, does anything like that, honestly, I'm just happy if people would interact. But feel free, leave a comment, leave a like, do whatever, share it, whatever you want to do. I'm going to keep doing these because I find them very enjoyable, very fun. And I'm not doing it to go viral or to get popular on here, to do this for a living or anything like that. I'm doing it simply to have a good time. And I hope more people just keep coming and listening. That'd be ideal. As far as how often I'm going to release episodes, nothing for sure right now. I will be recording another episode later this week. Hopefully upload that. I'm probably going to record it on, thinking Friday. I'll probably record an episode. Hopefully get that released on Friday. It'll be an ACC preview where I'll go over conference champion, who's in the conference championship, dark horse teams, kind of disappointing team, surprising team, yada, yada, yada. Player of the year, coach of the year, stuff like categories like that. And I'll do one for each conference as we get closer and closer to week 0 and week 1. And I'll be doing only the 4 main conferences: ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC. I think I said all 4. So ACC will be first, and then I think I'm doing the Big 10, then SEC, and then we'll end on Big 12. And I think the Big 12 should be the Friday before week 0, where we have really one good game, in my opinion, with Florida State and Georgia Tech in Ireland. And but SMU Nevada could be interesting. But anyways, we're not talking about week 0 right now. But yeah, I'm hoping to get at least one episode a week out to y'all at some point. Most of the time, it'll probably be on Friday. I'm doing this one as kind of an intro, just to kind of get my feet wet, get the feel of all this. And I'm excited for the season. I'm excited to start all this, to be honest. So if anyone even is listening, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode. Thank you. Have a good day.